Trump breaking his silence on what he says caused his close friendship with Jeffrey Epstein to crumble.
For years, I wouldn't talk to Jeffrey Epstein. I wouldn't talk because he did something that was inappropriate. He hired help. And I said, don't ever do that again. He stole people that worked for me. I said, don't ever do that again. He did it again. And I threw him out of the place, persona non grata. I threw him out, and that was it. I'm glad I did, if you want to know the truth.
Well, you know, of course, we've heard from multiple guests, all of whom knew Trump in different times and ways. They all agreed with one thing, that Epstein and Trump were once, quote, best friends. Now, of course, the big question is, what does that really mean when it comes to Trump? And if Epstein and Trump ended their long friendship, as Trump describes it, happening there, right? Because that Epstein hired people who worked for him. Well, who was the hired help that Epstein was stealing away that was so important? There are a lot of questions about this. The answers matter. And in a moment, I'm going to speak to people who have inside knowledge of the Epstein investigation and Trump and Epstein's relationship. But obviously, it's important that Trump chose to disclose these details tonight. It is a big turnaround from past answers as of late about what came between him and Epstein.
I did have a falling out a long time ago. The reason doesn't make any difference.
Well, Trump now sees that the reason perhaps does make a difference, and that his attempts to dismiss the Epstein investigation are not working. They're not making it go away.
It's a hoax that's been built up way beyond proportion. I don't do drawings. I'm not a drawing person.
All right, Trump referring there to the crude drawing that was reported by the Wall Street Journal to have been in Epstein's 50th birthday book. He just tried to make this all go away, denying making the drawing, calling the whole thing a hoax. Now, of course, this is not a hoax because we're talking about targeting, assaulting, and raping underage girls. But the point is still this: Trump's trying to make it go away. And when it failed, you know, to say, oh, I didn't do the drawing or the whole thing's a hoax, he's tried another tack, which is to claim that the Biden administration and former FBI Chief James Comey are behind the Epstein files, tampering with them or making them up in some way.
I can say this: those files were run by the worst scum on earth. If they had anything, why didn't they use it when I was killing Joe?
Of course, it's worth here just one basic fact that I think speaks 1,000 words, which is that Epstein was arrested while Trump was president. But Trump tried to blame Biden anyway for all of this, anything to make it go away. And now he is even dangling a pardon to the one person who is serving time for helping Epstein run a child sex trafficking ring. That, of course, is Ghislaine Maxwell, convicted liar who may end up in the position of actually being able to sink or save people whose names are in the Epstein files.
Well, I'm allowed to give her a pardon, but nobody's approached me with it. Nobody's asked me about it. It's in the news about that aspect of it, but right now it would be inappropriate to talk about it.
Right now, it'd be inappropriate, he says. Not ever. Of course, Maxwell's attorney has been very clear she wants a pardon. He spoke out publicly on Friday, saying that they hope Trump acts in what they say is a right and just way. And tonight, Maxwell, who is serving 20 years for her role in helping Epstein groom and abuse those underage girls, is pressing ahead with an appeal to the Supreme Court. She claims she was unlawfully prosecuted for her actions with Epstein. And while she waits to see if Trump or the Supreme Court come to her rescue, Democrats are warning of what they see as a corrupt bargain. The top Democrat on the Senate Judiciary Committee tonight demanding all records and transcripts from the DOJ's interviews over the past few days with Maxwell. You remember that meeting with the Assistant Attorney General, Todd Blanche, where Maxwell brought, there was a drone that actually captured this footage. She has this giant box. What is in that box? Well, Senator Durbin, the top Democrat there, pressing the Justice Department to give answers and to also commit publicly to not offering a pardon or commutation of sentence to Maxwell, saying, quote, serious questions about the potential for a corrupt bargain between the Trump administration and Ghislaine Maxwell. Well, those questions are front and center tonight, which has Trump's one-time first buddy, Elon Musk, posting a bullseye emoji to a post that reads, here's how it's about to go down. Ghislaine names a bunch of Democrats, maybe tosses in a few billionaires. She says Trump did nothing wrong. And then there's a picture of someone in MAGA hat with a button that reads "Fell for it again" award with the text, "MAGA praises her for, quote, taking down the pedophiles. Trump pardons her for, quote, telling the truth." Well, Jeff Zeleny is traveling with the president tonight, out front live in Edinburgh, Scotland. And Jeff, the president's new explanation of his falling out with Epstein, which he really has not wanted to talk about, right? He said, oh, the reason doesn't matter. I don't want to talk about it. Now he's coming out with this that it was about hiring people who worked for him. It's raising new questions tonight.
Aaron, it is raising new questions and certainly not answering the old ones. It was fairly notable as President Trump was sitting next to the British Prime Minister talking about Gaza, talking about Ukraine and Russia. He was asked questions because he kept the Q&A going with reporters for some 75 minutes. The questions came near the end of that period, and he was asked these questions, and he talked at length about this, simply adding more oxygen to what has been a political crisis, at the very least, that the White House has been trying to get beyond. And clearly, even an ocean away does not allow the president to do that. But adding those new details is certainly going to keep this alive. But Aaron, I was struck by the president, that he's had so many inconsistencies about whether he'd been briefed about his name being in the files. And he said when he landed here in Scotland on Friday evening, he had not been briefed. Of course, the White House acknowledged that he had been briefed by the Attorney General. But today, he said something new. He said, well, you know, any name in there could be a hoax. Someone else put names in there. So certainly laying the predicate, the groundwork for the potential eventual release of his name being in the file. So that was notable as well. But certainly the explanation for why they parted ways back in 2004. Some people who are close to them had long believed it was a real estate deal. The president said that they were, he tried to hire some of those people. So again, the bottom line is the president's here, certainly not answering questions, and he'll have them waiting for him when he gets back to Washington. Aaron?
Well, absolutely, and so important, as you point out, talking about, you know, names being inserted into the files and laying the predicate for it being somehow a hoax, the word he likes to use, as to his name being in there, which he was briefed on in May, as we're aware, by the Attorney General. Jeff, thank you so much, reporting from Edinburgh there. Tara Palmieri is back with us. She has reported extensively on Epstein and Maxwell. Lulu Garcia-Navarro of the New York Times is here, and Spencer Kuvin. He represented 9 clients who made claims against Epstein, including a 14-year-old who reported Epstein and sparked the probe. So I appreciate all of you so very much. So, Tara, you've reported on this extensively, and now with Trump coming out, you know, first he says it doesn't matter why we fell apart, why we fell out, and now giving this explanation about hiring people who worked for him. There's been a lot of reporting on it being related to a real estate deal, but he's giving this, he stole people who worked for me. What do you know about all this?
I mean, who would he steal that was working for him? Jeffrey Epstein was a financier, allegedly, and Donald Trump had properties, right? That he had golf courses, he had real estate. I mean, Jeffrey Epstein also had a number of properties. The only person we know that was actually poached from Mar-a-Lago when they were working there was Virginia Roberts Giuffre at 16 years old in the year 2000 by Ghislaine Maxwell. That is a person that we know. And then Virginia went on to live basically enslaved by them for the next 2 years, passed around, like she said, like a fruit
So you're saying the
dish.
only person that we know of that
Exactly.
Epstein hired who worked for Trump was a 16-year-old girl.
Yes, Virginia Giuffre. And
Yep.
so I have no idea. We know that they got in a bidding war over a piece of property, ironically called the House of Friendship. President Trump was angry that Epstein made him bid higher and higher and higher. And apparently he called him afterwards, according to his sworn testimony to a lawyer, and shouted at him over that. And it broke them up. And this was about in 2004, because Epstein was investigated starting in 2006. It was a convenient time to no longer be associated with a pedophile. But yeah, I mean, this is the story for a very, very, very long time, that their friendship ended over property.
Over property, right. And if you're staying over hiring people, again, there are questions about that. We only know of the one, Virginia Giuffre, who was at the center of all of, turning Epstein in, and of course, Prince Andrew, all of that. Lulu, it is, it's almost like anything that he now says, and as Jeff pointed out, he's injecting a predicate in here for saying that his name is part of a hoax. Others may be real. But this inconsistency on how they even stopped being friends.
I mean, I think this is part of, first of all, Trump trying to distance himself from this, to muddle the timeline, to confuse people over what may or may not have happened. But at the end of the day, this is only going to fuel the fire. Why? Because we still don't know a lot about what happened. There is a lot, as you mentioned, that has been talked about through court cases, et cetera. But there's these central questions about Trump's relationship with Jeffrey Epstein and what actually happened there, what broke them apart, and what was the relationship during the 90s? How well did they know each other? We know that he was on their flight logs that we know that he was on the famous plane, the Lolita Express, as it was called. But we should say transparently, there is nothing that links Donald Trump, the president, to any misdeeds that were committed. But this is a scandal because, we know that there are files, we know that there is information, and we don't have access to it.